Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld podcast. Today is Thursday, August 1st, 2019, and tonight's topic, Square's Cash App sells $125 million worth of Bitcoin in the second quarter. The Cash App Bitcoin revenues grew 238% year over year and 91% quarter over quarter. Now before we get started, this is not an offer to buy or sell any security. In fact, we don't do stock recommendations and we rarely discuss stocks on this channel. And tonight is no different. We're looking at the public company Square Inc., not their financials. This is not an overview of the company, solely at their sales of Bitcoin over the last year since they started selling Bitcoin in Q1 2018. And we're going to look at the significance of this. Okay, so as I mentioned, the Square app hit a record sales number of $125 million worth of Bitcoin. Now, selling Bitcoin does not really help the Square app bottom line. They made $2 million on that revenue because it's essentially they buy the Bitcoin, they sell the Bitcoin, they get a small markup, and they move on. So it's not something they're looking for. I listened to the conference call. They did not discuss it. Although it is a significant piece of revenue, it is not a margin driver. It's $2 million this quarter. Last quarter, when the app sold, was about $67 million worth of Bitcoin, they made $833,000. So this is not a revenue driver, but it is significant to the business because it does drive a certain amount of engagement. The more you have people using the Square app, the more millions of people that are on there, the different features you add there, the more they spend their time there, the more you can add other products. Also significant, I believe, is that I don't think that whales are buying Bitcoin on their Square apps. This is a large amount of Bitcoin sold at, I would say, the retail level. Let's take a look, though. We do have a chart, and it's quite significant. You can see the increase in sales of Bitcoin. So they opened up in 2018 offering Bitcoin on the Square app in the first quarter, and they sold approximately 3,200 Bitcoin, and that was worth $34 million. Now remember, Q1 2018 at one point at a very high price. It was at near the highs, and during that first quarter, the average price was very high, higher than it is now. Now in the second quarter, the price of Bitcoin fell, and the Square app sold 4,700 Bitcoin. So they increased their sales in Bitcoin, and even the revenue went up. Q3, as the price fell, they sold even more Bitcoin, almost 6,000 Bitcoin through the Cash app. That was worth about $43 million. And then in the Q4, the crypto winter, when the Bitcoin price hit its bottom of about $3,300, they sold about 10,000 Bitcoin. That was worth $52 million. And in the first quarter this year, they ramped up. Even as the price rose, they sold more Bitcoin, going from 10,000 to 17,000. And because the price was lower in the first quarter than the fourth quarter, they didn't really increase the revenues by the 70% they increased their Bitcoin sold, but they still sold 65 million. Second quarter, the one that most recently ended, and that's basically from April, May, and June, we saw a significant price rise, and I took the average price of the 91 days and gave it $7,300. That's a very rough way of coming up with these numbers of Bitcoin sold. They could have been front-end loaded, the sales. They could have been loaded towards June. I don't know. They didn't give any guidance on this. It's not something they break out. But I calculated that was about 17,000 Bitcoin again. But they did give us the number in the SEC filings and in the shareholder letter. And I'll give you copies and links to those at the Smaulgld site below this video, below this BitChute. Now, it's a significant number because it's $125 million worth of Bitcoin. Last year, all last year, they sold $166 million worth of Bitcoin. Now, why is it significant for Bitcoin, even if it's not directly significant for Square? Well, we know that about 1,800 Bitcoin, new Bitcoin, are produced each day by miners. That's about 54,000 a month, or 162,000 per quarter. Well, if the Square app, or the Cash app from Square, is selling 17,000 a quarter out of the 162,000, well, they're over 10% of the overall. That's about 10.5, 10.6% of all the newly mined Bitcoin. That's significant in and of itself, given that I would imagine much more Bitcoin is being sold through the exchanges, through the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. It's probably about twice the amount of that each quarter. This is just a small sliver of consumer demand, and it's pulling 10% of the newly mined Bitcoin, which is interesting because in 290 days, the amount of newly mined Bitcoin will fall from 1,800 Bitcoin a day to about 900 Bitcoin a day. And that would mean that in a given quarter, they're only going to be mining about 81,000 Bitcoin per quarter. And if they even stay at the current rate at 17,000, well, then their 10.6% goes up to 21% of the overall newly mined Bitcoin. Now, the reason newly mined Bitcoin is important is because, first of all, they estimate there's going to be, well, not estimate, this is a hard code, 21 million Bitcoin will ever be created. 3 to 4 million of those have been lost. About 18 million have already been mined, so there's only 3 million left to mine. And according to some blockchain analysts, about 10 million of those Bitcoin haven't moved in the last year. So if you're looking to meet demand for new people coming on, testing out Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin on exchanges and ATMs and at Coinstar kiosks and on Cash apps, just the really what I would call the minor nickels and dimes or small satoshis, there's really not that much Bitcoin out there. And if Square Cash app continues to grow at its pace while the newly mined supply continues to fall, that may lead to some price appreciation. What do you guys think of the Square Cash app and their Bitcoin sales? Leave a note below. Thank you very much.